on this episode of the On Pace podcast. It's easy to look at all these other people and say, well, I wish I had what they have, or I wish I could be like that. You don't have to become someone else to have a great year. The best version of yourself is already inside you. And that's what I want to reiterate. The best version of yourself is already inside of you. You're listening to the On Pace podcast, and I'm your host, James Fuller. As a banker by day, I've been serving people for over 20 years, and helping others is one of the things that I love most. While banking is my day job, other pleasures include being a husband, dad, musician, runner, and most recently, a private pilot. My goal in life is to be an example of the best husband, dad, and Christian that my wife can be thankful for and my son can look up to. Not to mention, I want to be able to keep up with him for at least a few more years. This podcast was created with one goal in mind, and that is to help and inspire others. I want the On Pace podcast to be motivational, encouraging, and educational. We will discuss topics of both personal and business nature, as well as interview individuals from various walks of life that have achieved some amazing things, all while overcoming challenges they faced and showing how they were able to build endurance. I encourage you to buckle up and enjoy the ride. Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to the On Pace podcast. Thank you for listening to the On Pace podcast. Welcome back if you are a returning listener. If you're a new listener, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you listening to the On Pace podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, this is a first. So I've had one other episode that was on YouTube, and I had a guest on that podcast. But this is the first time I've done a solo episode, and I'd love to do more of these video podcast episodes on YouTube. So if you'd like to follow me on YouTube, you can follow me over there. It's just James Fuller. And then, of course, if you're listening on podcasts, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so you can find us on Apple, Spotify, TuneIn. There's, I don't know how many there are out there, but thanks to Buzzsprout, they push it out to all the major platforms. I don't have to do all that. And so shout out to Buzzsprout for being an awesome hosting podcast platform. So if you're interested in starting a podcast, they're a great avenue. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to send you a referral link. I think you might get a little bit of a discount. I get a kickback. So it's another great way for you to start up a podcast if you'd like to. And I'm happy to always answer questions. So if you have questions about maybe how to start a podcast or what equipment to use, I'm more than happy to talk about that and help you along the way. I think it's super cool. It seems like everybody and their brother has a podcast these days, but at the same time, it's cool. I think it's really neat when we have all of these podcast episodes out there that you can choose to listen to, and you can pretty much find a podcast on whatever you want. So whether it's self-help, whether it's fitness, whether it's murder mystery, whether it's aviation. I love listening to aviation podcasts as a pilot. So there's literally a podcast out there for whatever. And so if you're interested in starting a podcast, you have any questions on how to get it started up, feel free to reach out to me. You can find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm on Facebook at The On Pace Podcast and on Instagram at on.pace. And so you can follow the podcast there. If you want to reach out, you can send us a message on either one of those, or you can email me at theonpacepodcast@icloud.com. And I am more than happy to receive comments. So if you have questions, comments, suggestions on how we can improve the podcast, I would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And I've got some great potential guests coming up this year. So we ended 24 with 13 episodes. So we averaged a little more than one a month. I would have loved to have had more. We were a little heavy on the front end of 2024. And then things kind of got crazy and busy, and the podcast episodes unfortunately slowed down as we went further into the year. But I'm very happy. 24 was the most that we've been able to put out so far since we started the podcast back in, I guess it was 2020. We don't want to talk about 2020, but hopefully going into 25, I'll be able to get some additional guests on here. I've talked to a couple of pilots that may come on as guests, some other podcasters. I'd love to have some other podcasters on as guests, and then of course business professionals. All of those I want to bring on to talk about their story and hopefully bring some value and worth to you as the listener. And so if you have any suggestions on potential guests, feel free to reach out. Like I said, shoot me a message. That's the On Pace Podcast at iCloud.com, or you can send a direct message on social media, Instagram on.pace, or the On Pace Podcast on Facebook. So today's episode, it's going to be a quick one. I really wanted to talk a little bit about, a new year, new goals, but it's still the same me. So that's what I've titled the podcast: New Year, New Goals, Same Me. And so as part of that, what I want to challenge you is, first off, reflect on your past year. Think about 2024. Celebrate those wins that you had in 24. Highlight your accomplishments. Don't forget those. It's so easy many times to focus on the negatives, the things. I've got friends that are like, man, I'm so ready. 24 is over. I'm so glad 24 is over. And I get that. Trust me. I think we all were thinking that back in 2020. But celebrate the wins that you had in 24. You may say, well, I didn't have any wins. Well, I get that. And I see you. I hear you. But hey, you're able to take another breath, and you're walking into 2025 with an opportunity to change the future. Every day you wake up, you have the ability to change your future. And so celebrate that. Celebrate that you have the opportunity to start another year and hopefully make it a better one than 2024 was if 24 was bad. The other thing is, think about those challenges that you did go through. So that's kind of focused to those people that are like, man, I'm glad 24 is over. Think about the challenges that you had in 24. Think about those setbacks and the struggles and see how they shaped you going into 2025. Did you learn from those lessons? Were you able to overcome them? Or, that right there in and of itself is something you can celebrate as a win if you overcame that challenge. And then think about how you're bringing those lessons in from last year into 2025. So just reflect on the past year and go into 2025 learning from your wins, your mistakes, your challenges, everything, and go into 2025, guns a-blazing, ready to go. It's easy in these New Year's resolutions that we set to put this all-in mentality where, if we're going to do all this stuff day one, January 1st is just another day. And that's what, if I can challenge you with anything, don't think about January 1st as I've got to do all these goals on January 1st. I actually started my New Year's kind of goals or resolutions about a week and a half before the New Year, because as I was kind of pinning some of them down, I was like, why wait till January 1st? Might as well go ahead and start now. And so I actually started, I had some running goals, some fitness goals, some weight goals. We all have those at the beginning of the year. And so I started working toward those about a week and a half before the new year. And I know we're 10 days into, 2025, but if you just have the mentality of like, well, I've already, fallen off the wagon, I'm 10 days in, then you're not going to continue striving to achieve that goal. We have this, a lot of times we have this all-in mentality, like all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be that way. So as you're going into this new year, think about that and just make sure that you give yourself some grace. That's probably a good way to put it. Give yourself some grace to make mistakes and then overcome those and get back on the horse. At the end of the title, I had that same me, that's embracing that same me philosophy. A lot of times as we go into the new year, we set all these new goals. We think we've got to totally reinvent ourselves every year. We've got to change everything about us. And maybe some of us feel we do have to change everything about us. But, the thing is there's not this total reinvention of ourselves that we have to do. Let's celebrate the things that we have that we can claim as our great characteristics, our great traits. Celebrate those. Think about those qualities, the habits, the values that you're proud of, that you want to maintain. And then look at those areas where, yes, I need to improve. Don't think that you have to completely reinvent your entire existence as you are setting those goals for the new year. And then as we're setting those, and as we're in that whole same me philosophy, make sure you give yourself some love. And I'm not trying to be, whatever you want to call it. I'm just saying, make sure you're accepting of yourself. We can be so hard on ourselves, and I am just as guilty as anybody. The other day, I was telling Mandy that I can't even remember what the scenario was, but something had happened. And I mean, whatever I did was just the dumbest, stupidest thing that I could have done. And I was so hard on myself. I was talking, negatively to myself. And thankfully I recognized it. I was like, man, well, why am I being so hard on myself about this? We would not allow someone else to talk to us the way that we talk to ourselves sometimes. Or better yet, I would not talk to other people the way I talk to myself sometimes. And so make sure that you're accepting yourself, celebrate those consistencies that I was just talking about, and then look for those areas of improvement that you can improve upon. Also, when you're setting your goals going into the new year, as we've started 2025 and you're continuing those goals, make sure your goals are, I'm still in this from my work, but make sure they're SMART. And SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So if you are just throwing some goals out there that are not SMART, they're not specific, they're not measurable, they're not achievable, they're not relevant, there's not a time constraint or time ability on those, it's really hard to know where you are in the process of your goal. And so make sure you're setting SMART goals. Once again, that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. Avoid that all or nothing trap, because that's all it is a trap. We go in, we've all done it. We start the new year, we have these goals, and 2 weeks in, we fall off the wagon and we give up, and we don't think about the goal again for the rest of the year. And I've done that. I'm being a little candid here, but some of my goals that I've set for the year are fitness related. I've got some reading goals. I've got some personal development goals. I've got some relationship goals with my family. All of those things I kind of thought about as I've gone into the new year. One of those goals was I want to read the Bible through for the entire year. And, it's very easy to, if you miss a day, just, okay, throw up your hands and give up and never read it again. And I already we're 10 days in. I already had a day that I missed. And it would have been very easy to say, you know what, I give up, I'm done. We're not going to continue this goal anymore. But I was able to go back, pick up that day in the earlier part of the day. And then before the end of the day, I was able to read my day for that day. And so what that allowed me to do is continue striving towards my goal, even though I may have considered it as a failure for one day. I was able to start back the next day. Every day is a new day, and so I got back up and I got back on, like I said, got back on the horse, and continued my reading goal for the year. And the biggest thing is not getting too far behind. So acknowledge, I failed today. But you know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna resume and complete that goal. And I was able to start that goal again the next day. And I'm very happy to say that I'm on track. And hopefully, I realize we're only 10 days in. I got 355 more to go. But hopefully I'm able to maintain that goal as the year continues. So avoid that all or nothing trap. And if you do fail, just get back up. Like, that's the thing. Don't just give up when you fail. Get back up. And make sure that your goals, are something that you can be passionate about. That's the other thing is we don't just throw goals out there that you don't believe in or that you can't strive for, because they're not going to push you. The other thing is when you're doing this, make sure you have strategies to stay on track. So make sure you have some accountability. If you can bring someone in and have that accountability partner, that helps you. And so, like, for instance, with Mandy and I, we're both reading through the Bible for the year. It's really hard for me to go to bed without reading when I look over and see Mandy sitting there reading hers for the day. And so, that's a small example, but if you've got some fitness goals, have a friend that you can, talk to about it, keep accountable, maybe check in and say, hey, once or twice a week, give me a call and say, hey, how are you doing this week? So there is a huge benefit and a power to having an accountability partner. So sharing your goals with other and creating that support system is a great way to maintain your goals. And then make sure you have a tracker, an ability to track your progress as you go. So if you aren't tracking your progress, you have no way of knowing where you are in the process. And this is just a simple example, but if I have a goal of losing, 20 pounds in the year, if I'm not weighing myself on a daily or weekly basis, I have no way of knowing if I'm accomplishing my goal or not. And so make sure you have some method of trackability within your goals, and make sure you're doing that. And then also celebrate those small wins. So, it's easy to set these huge lofty goals, and we never celebrate the steps as we get there. So make sure you have segments along the way that you can celebrate as you accomplish those. And so, like I was saying, I like to run. So as I'm running a race, I will break that race down into segments. So, if it's a half marathon distance, I may break it down into, 5K increments. And those 5K increments I can celebrate as I accomplish. So the first 3.1 miles I get, I look down at, hey, I've ran a 5K. And then by the time I get to, a 10K or a 15K, I can say, hey, I'm 15K done. I've got a little over 4 miles left. Look at what I've already accomplished, and I've got this last little bit. And so make sure you celebrate those small wins as you are on your journey. One thing to think about is growth doesn't happen without pressure. And so I think about the gym that's sitting behind me. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my gym in the garage is kind of my backdrop. You're not going to increase in fitness with lifting and growing if you're not challenging and pushing yourself. I can come out here and lift the same weight every day, and yeah, I maintain a level of fitness, but I'm not going to improve or grow. And so I have to add weight. I have to challenge my body. I have to continue to push past those limits to improve and grow. And so just make sure that you remember that there may be pain along the way, there may be difficulty, there may be challenge, but continue and strive to accomplish, and grow. I can't remember the exact time frame. I want to say it's 23 days or something like that to turn a habit into a consistent, or turn something into a consistent habit. So after you do something, I'm sorry if you're listening, I'm talking all over the place here, but it takes you roughly 20 something days to turn something into a habit where it's not as difficult for you to continue. And so make sure that you don't start and then give up within the first few days. Continue past and make that become a habit. Make sure that you continue pushing and growing and challenging yourself. So one thing I would ask is, what are some goals that you have set in your life, and what are your metrics that you're measuring those, and also how are you tracking them, and what are the small wins within those goals that you're going to celebrate? Think about those things as you're continuing on in this 2025 year. I would encourage you to input your strategies that you're doing. Comment below, comment on YouTube, send me a message. Let me know, what you found to be successful as you're doing these, goals and maintaining your balance. I'd love to hear from you. And then, the other thing is find some, one thing that works for me is I like to listen to audiobooks. And so as I'm maybe working out or I'm running or, just going through my day to day, I find it difficult for me to sit down and read a book because I'm always just going and I'm busy. So I will listen to audiobooks, but if you're someone that can sit down and read a book, find a book that will grow your mind and give you some ideas on things that you can strive for, how you can accomplish those goals. There's a lot of great authors out there. Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors, so I listen to a lot of Simon Sinek. Find a podcast out there that you can listen to. There's lots of podcasts as obviously if you're listening to this, it's a podcast, but it seems like every day, everybody's got their podcast these days. You can literally find a podcast on whatever you want to listen to. So what I'm trying to say is whether it's books, podcast, find something that, fits within those goals that you've set for yourself and continues to motivate you to accomplish those. So if you are constantly, thinking or listening about, fitness and improving your goals and weight loss or lifting weights or running and improving your distance and all those things, if you're listening to things in those veins or you're reading things in those veins, it's going to keep challenging you to strive and to continue. I use this as an example because we used to drive a Toyota Prius. And that Toyota Prius, my wife and I would always have this, competition on who could get the best mileage in it. And I think I would see sometimes upwards of 60 miles per gallon. And we were talking about, why the Prius has such great gas mileage. And I do think there's levels of obviously fuel efficiency that's built into the vehicle. But I think a lot of the reason why the Prius does so well on mileage is because you have this meter that's right in front of your face that tells you whether you're accelerating too fast, whether you're braking too hard and it's not able to capture enough regen energy. So you've got this meter that's constantly in front of you and it's telling you what you need to do, what you're not doing well enough to optimize your mileage in that vehicle. And it's the same way in life. If we've got something like back to what I was saying earlier, if we've got something that's trackable, that's measurable, that's specific, you have a much greater chance of accomplishing what you're setting out to do if you have those things in place that are allowing you to see how you're doing, how you can improve upon it, what maybe you need to do better, what maybe you're not doing well enough. That's going to give you that guidance you need to accomplish your goals. And so think about those things, making sure that you have the ability to measure and track and have the accountability. All of those things, make sure you have those as your continuing goals. And I can't say this enough. Don't fall into the all or nothing trap. Make sure that you give yourself some grace, please. Our pastor challenged us with the Bible reading. He was like, maybe there's people out there that are just absolutely perfect that will never miss a day. And I'm sure there are. But the rest of us, there'll be a night where you're just absolutely exhausted. You happen to fall asleep on the couch before you get your Bible reading in. It's okay. Give yourself some grace, but then don't give up. Start back the next day and continue with your goals. Like I said, it's not this all or nothing thing. So just wanted to keep that in mind. As far as going into 25, I want to challenge you to be the best version of yourself you can be. That's the thing. You don't need to become someone else. It's easy to look at all these other people and say, well, I wish I had what they have, or I wish I could be like that. You don't have to become someone else to have a great year. The best version of yourself is already inside you. And that's what I want to reiterate. The best version of yourself is already inside of you. And you control how that comes to the surface. And so setting your goals to improve every day, that's what I want. I always want to wake up and be the best version of myself I can be for my family. I want my wife and my son to be proud of me. That's in the kickoff of each of the episodes. I talk about that. I want my family to be happy and proud of the dad, the husband, the Christian that they have. And I want to give my best self every day. I fail daily. I don't give myself the best every day. I don't give my family the best of me every day. And I hate to say that, but I'm just being truthful, candid, and honest with you. I fail on a daily basis. But I assure you that is my desire. That is my goal. And if I failed, say one day and then I just gave up, well, then I'm just continuing to fail. And so give yourself that grace that I was talking about. Remember that the best version of yourself is already in you. and it's your responsibility. It's, your obligation, but also your ability to bring that to the surface. And so I challenge you to find the best version of yourself and share it with others. And your progress is personal, and the journey is personal. So you can't necessarily measure your progress with someone else's progress. The journey is just as valuable as the destination. So yeah, you may hit that goal, but keep in mind that the journey is part of that process. I enjoy coming out here and working out. There's days I don't want to. There's days I don't want to go for a run. But the journey of accomplishing the goal, that is part of accomplishing that goal. And so those 3 mile, those 6 mile runs that I have to do to be able to run a marathon or a half marathon, that's part of the journey. Celebrate those. Most of the time, if I'm not feeling like I want to run for the day and I make myself go do it, when I get back, you know what? I'm very thankful that I did it. And so I think if you continue fighting and striving to accomplish your goals, even if you fail, you get back up and you continue on, you're going to look back if you accomplish that goal, within the year or maybe next year. Maybe it's a goal that you carry forward. There's nothing that says that, if you don't accomplish your goal, you can't set that as a goal for the following year. Whenever you accomplish a goal, you're going to look back, you're going to see that progress, and you're going to be glad that you stuck with it. So thank you so much for listening. Like I said, if you want to follow us on social media, you can follow me on on.pace on Instagram, the On Pace Podcast on Facebook. You can follow me on YouTube. It's James Fuller. And you can reach out via email. It's the On Pace Podcast at iCloud.com. I would love to hear from you. I would love to get some feedback. If you could give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to, that helps us grow the podcast. And that's ultimately what I want to do. I want to grow the podcast and hopefully bring value and worth to those that are listening. So thanks for tuning in to this first episode of 2025. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I hope you find your pace, stick to it, have a wonderful day, and a great new year.